Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the 8th day of counting the Omer. You see that I'm not in the synagogue. We've already returned home for the beginning of Shabbat, which is coming up real soon. So we're just putting this blog out there before we get up close and wishing everyone watching a really happy and blessed Shabbat when it starts later on. And if you're holding virtual services, enjoy them and enjoy your worshipping the Lord on his day. So what's been catching my eye and thoughts this last few days and was something I discovered actually. I'm in the process at the minute of writing a book, and in amongst all the piles of notes and scribbles that have been put down over the years as I've been collating all the material, I discovered something which I thought was quite interesting. Again, something it's a thought from a while ago, but it's a very good thought, I think. I'll share it with you. And it's really about how the prophets, when they are, shall we say, prophetically criticizing our people and our nation, how little they actually criticize in terms of the observances of the mitzvot, the commandments, specific commandments. So it's interesting that you don't find Jeremiah or Isaiah really sort of going out and preaching hard about the lack of kosher observance or things like that. Very little really about Shabbat observances, although there's some mention. But on the whole range of the mitzvot, of the commandments that we see in the Torah, very little detail given by the prophets on this. Instead, the prophets really focus on, shall we say, the bigger picture, the justice issues, the righteousness issues, the fairness issues, the holiness issues. And that kind of is intriguing in many, many ways. They're really looking at, if you break this down and try to understand what's happening with the prophetic view on all this, what the prophets are looking at is the failure for Israel, the failure for all of us really as believers, as Jews, is the failure for us to produce the outcome of keeping the Torah and keeping the mitzvot in that way. It's the righteous behavior which is created in us spiritually by our observance, by our being obedient to the Lord. People often think that obedience is just good for obedience sake, and actually it isn't. If all you do is obey, that isn't really what it's about. That doesn't actually take you there. It's not a kind of spiritual just do it. That isn't enough. There's something bigger going on behind all this, because if it was enough, then obviously clearly our lifestyles and everything will be reflected by something bigger, which the prophets go in on and say it isn't. It seems to be a problem. There's a disconnect between, so to say, merely doing something and the outcomes, the fruit of being obedient in that way. And so in many ways, I think we then have to ask ourselves the question, what is the fruit of this? What are we meant to be producing? What righteousness are we meant to be producing when we are keeping the commandments in this way? In other words, they are meant to teach us something. We are meant to learn something by obeying. A spiritual habit is formed within us, which leads us to a place where we become not only more obedient, but more righteous, more holy, more just, more merciful, more understanding, a bigger revelation, if you like, of who God is. In other words, the act of keeping in the right way through faith and trusting, through the Lord's own salvation and mercy to us when we get it wrong. And thankfully his mercy is huge, and his salvation is enough through Yeshua for us to walk that path of holiness when we do get it wrong, which is often. But that cycle that we go through of obedience should be training us and teaching us to actually begin to learn more about who God is, learn more about who we are as well, and not just keep them for the sake of keeping them. And in fact, it's really interesting that many within certainly the Orthodox spectrum, I suspect also within the Reform and Liberal spectrum as well, to be fair, are seeing this and understanding this. Of course, some of our greats have spotted this. Even our more modern greats, I'm talking about the likes of Heschel, of course, as a Jewish philosopher. I mean, if you've not read his works, I can thoroughly recommend that. He's awesome. He recognizes this and the need for this. And one of our more modern greats, although maybe not everyone would label him thus, but I do, is Rabbi Cardozo of the Cardozo Institute in Jerusalem. Orthodox scholar and rabbi, awesome writer and thinker, and again, a modern Jewish philosopher. In many of his writings, he's highlighting exactly the same disconnect and dissonance between just the mere keeping of the commandments and the fruit they are meant to produce within us. We're meant to change as a result of living that act of righteousness before the Lord. The mitzvot have never existed in this way to be merely a goal in themselves. The Torah is not a goal within itself. It's a tool. It's a toolbox. God has given us a toolbox through that revelation of the Torah to achieve something and achieve something in us. And if we don't allow the Spirit of God to actually work through us by our obedience through his righteous commandments, then we are failing the very purpose of that revelation of the Torah, which has been given to us in the first place. Of course, I don't think I need to mention that Yeshua himself, Messiah himself, said exactly these words, as we know from the Besorah in Matachel of Matthews. It's known in English, chapter 23. And one of the comments that Yeshua makes there is he's talking about those who are maybe approaching the commandments in the wrong way in this way, and just saying, he berated the proshim of his day, saying, you tithe your dill and your mint and your cumin and other things, and yet you disregard the weightier elements and matters of the Torah. And of course, most people tend to stop the sentence at that point and just think Yeshua was berating the Proshim, the Pharisees of his day. You need to read on, because of course he said, don't stop tithing those. He's not saying you got it wrong. He's saying, no, that's fine. Tithing, you should be tithing. That is a Torah command. It's a mitzvah. You should be tithing. He's not saying to stop doing it. He says, but don't neglect the weightier matters of the Torah: justice, mercy, faithfulness, righteousness, goodness, kindness, all of these things. If all we're doing is not seething a kid in its mother's milk because we think that's a commandment we need to keep, and we're not understanding that this is an act of kindness to the mother, or stealing a chick from the nest when the mother bird is around. This is about kindness. This is about respect of life. This is about how feelings and sentiments are expressed on a conscious level in beings that are alive, be they human or animals. There's a bigger picture here. It's not just about doing something. And you can look at all the commandments in this way. Certainly within our Union of Messianic Synagogues and Union of British Messianic Synagogues and our synagogue at Yeshua, this is how we approach the commandments. We're meant to learn spiritual lessons from our obedience in this way. If we do that and we allow the Spirit of God to change us, then we shall become more like his Son Yeshua. And that is our ultimate goal. So I want to encourage you, don't just do it. Think about why you're being obedient. Think about how you're being obedient in Messiah, how that impacts your life and the bigger lessons that you're meant to learn from it. I wish you all a lovely Shabbat. The next blog will be on Yom Rishon, on Sunday. There won't be a blog tomorrow because it's Shabbat and we shall be in our Shabbat service. Shabbat Shalom again.